Alright guys, so today we're going to be talking about the Sons of the Forest. Now, let me just address this first by saying I have very limited knowledge of the first game. I played it on a really bad PC, maybe the first hour or two of gameplay, just enough to know what the game is, but a lot of the stuff that might have carried over from the first game, or I might think is new here, I just never might have got to in the first game. So if I make any mistakes like that, forgive me for that. But let's go ahead and break it down. So let me address the immediate difference between Sons of the Forest and the first game, and that's the GPS locator. Now, again, I could have just not got to this in the first game, but from the beginning of Sons of the Forest, you have this GPS locator that shows you every cave, every waypoint, every hotspot, everything on the map that you need to go to. Now, if you just want to survive and settle and explore, you can still do that. You can build your base, you can get food, you can get water, you can set up defenses and go around just randomly exploring the world and come across settlements and plane crashes and stuff like that, getting different types of loot. But if you want to actually complete the story that is here, all of these waypoints are given to you. So, you can go straight to where you need to go, there's no aimlessly wandering around looking for stuff, and there's good and bad parts to this. Obviously, the good of this is that you're not stuck aimlessly wandering around the map trying to figure out what to do or having to look up a tutorial, but the bad is it kind of takes away that sense of exploration and ruins the base building a bit, and I'll break that down more in a minute. So, vocab word of the day, what's your central gameplay loop? What are you doing in this game? So, you're going to be running around scavenging, picking up rocks and logs and tape and wire and all of this stuff. And once you have that, you can craft new recipes, and then you can go and explore these caves fighting different types of enemies. The problem is, certain caves or waypoints will require you to have certain items that are locked behind certain other locations. So if Cave A you need, let's say, the scuba gear to get through, well, you don't get that until Cave C. But these caves aren't in order. It's procedurally generated where you spawn and the way you end up on the island, and I won't spoil any of that. So the way you come across these items could be varied. For me, again, I found that scuba tank first, but you could have found the grappling hook first, or the shotgun first. It just all depends on where you spawn, and in what rotation you choose to discover the map in. There's a fair bit of variation within that map. Within those waypoints, you're either going to be going into an actual cave or maybe a grave site you have to dig people up, settlements of the natives to this island, underground abandoned bunkers. There's variation within the terrain as well. There's a big mountain in the middle. There's some water stuff you have to do. Again, trying not to spoil anything. But for the most part, obviously with the name of the game, you're running around the forest. So I talked about how the base building was a bit ruined by the new GPS mechanic here. Let me address that a bit. So the base building's still really good. If you want to watch somebody build a base, if you want to build a dope base, if you want to have a treehouse, all that stuff that's still here, you can still do that. It still works very well. There's a whole collecting and storing inventory items system. The inventory in this game is very good, and we'll get to that in a minute. But my problem, if you were looking to just complete the story, what's going on this island, why are you here, how to escape it, there is no reason to build a base, because your inventory is so big and the game gives you all of the resources you need to directly go from one waypoint to the next waypoint, from the beginning all the way to the end. There is no reason to have a base. You can carry everything you need on you, and you can find enough stuff within these waypoints that you're never going to be hungry or need to go back to camp to do this or anything like that. You can build a bed to sleep, so that solves that problem. Again, these bunkers or caves or waypoints, all of these places you're going that are given to you, you're finding food and water, and because the points are given to you, you're not progressing at a slow enough rate to where you're running out of the food and water from the previous destination to the new destination, because essentially you're running in a straight line. Now, again, for the fun of things, you can still build a base and do all the survival elements and all that stuff, but if you're trying to be efficient and get through the game and you want to just play the story of escaping, it is very quick. I finished the game in 8 hours, and that's probably with an hour and a half of having no idea what I was doing and building a base. Now, as for the moment-to-moment gameplay, I would say it's an inventory management type game, except it's not, because of the plethora of resources they will give you. You are always going to have plenty of resources as long as you're going to these caves and bunkers. And these caves and bunkers restock with items after, I assume, a save or a sleep, and you can go back and refill if you want to do that survival route and just see how long you can survive on a higher difficulty. But My problem with that is that the inventory becomes so cluttered and there's so much stuff, by about halfway through, you're going to be completely lost. Luckily though, there is a system which manages to save that. You see me do it a couple times, this feature where you can hold up your backpack by holding the inventory button, and you can customize what slots you want on the backpack. So you don't have to go on the ground and access your whole inventory. It's basically like a Hot Wheel that affects as an in-game kind of without breaking the immersion, where you can equip what you want on the backpack, you know, a sidearm, your shotgun, your axe, your melee weapon, your crossbow, your meds, your grenades, whatever you want to equip on that backpack. Now obviously it's limited to have for balancing reasons, but for the most part it serves as a Hot Wheel. Now that being said, this game could do with a Hot Wheel. It gets very annoying having to hold I, switch from my gun back to my axe to melee, or every time I get revived having to re-pull out my backpack to pull out the axe, when I could just have a Hot Wheel or some keybind to instantly pull it back out. Now if you want to say that's part of the immersion factor and play into that, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I'm all for that. I'm just saying in terms of accessibility, that would be nice. Now here's where I'm going to talk spoilers a bit pertaining to the story. So again, I finished that main story of escaping the island within 8 hours. You can do more and survive and all of that stuff, but I was focusing on the aspect of surviving and escaping the island and figuring out the lore that was there. So in terms of the story, it doesn't really do anything too crazy, right? You go down this elevator and it's like a whole civilization down there. Now the game is in early access, so potentially they could do more with that. I'm not sure, or that could just be a term they're using for protecting the way that the game runs and performs right now. But it's nothing too special. It progresses at a decent rate. Pretty much every other to every third waypoint you go to or cave, you're going to be getting a new weapon or a new movement system or something you need to progress within other caves. Now, there's a lot of backtracking because of the way it's procedurally generated within your crash and where you spawn to, you know, move players around the map and make things different for replay value. The problem this causes is, for example, I spawned on the southeast side of the island, I believe, and again, I first found that scuba gear which allowed me to progress into certain parts of the cave, but let's say you would have spawned on the north side of the island, well then you would have come across all of these keycards rooms that you can't go in, and you would be progressing essentially backwards the way I did, to have to work backwards until you get these keycards and then work backwards again to go back through these keycard rooms. And that's just the way that the story and the way that the game is laid out. I had to backtrack a little bit, I think 2 or 3 locations that I had to go back to. And another problem I have with that whole system is the markers don't seem to go away. You go to a cave and complete it, and the clear objective of this cave was to get this grappling hook that was in it. Even once you get that grappling hook, the marker on the map does not go away, it's still there. So if you're not very careful in remembering where you've been and what caves you need to go back to and what caves you don't need to go back to and all of this stuff, then you can very easily be repeating stuff over and over again. Now, this could be due to the fact that I wasn't picking everything up because my inventory was full, and that's why these waypoints were going away, and it's some type of system like that. It could be something that's just not done yet, or a bug because it's in early access, any of those things, but it was just one of the things that I found annoying. So do I feel that $30 price range is the right price point for this game? Is it worth the value? Well, the game being in early access, I can't speak for what it's going to become later, but currently it depends on what you're going to be doing. If you want to just go through, get that playthrough of the story, the lore, escaping the island, then you're going to be looking at that 6 to 8 hour range, and I would say unless you really like this type of game, I would wait for a discount. But if you're going to be going through, playing the game, obviously doing the story and the lore, because I think everybody would want to do that once, but building a cool base and trying on higher difficulties to survive as long as you can and doing all of that stuff, because again, the base building system is really cool and works really well. It's something that they carried over and expanded upon from the first game. Once you learn it, then yeah, I would say it's a fair price point. It's nowhere near worth $60, because even with that base building mechanic, if it was at that price point, you're still looking at maybe 12 to 20 hours of gameplay, and just the quality of that gameplay isn't to that $60 range. But at $30, I feel like, depending on what you're doing, again, it's a relatively fair price point. Now, in thinking of a score for this game, I was struggling because yes, while everything you're doing is fun, a lot of it's carried over from the first game. It's a very short game, at least in the way that I played it, and it gets very repetitive. At that 8-hour range, I was starting to get bored of that cycle, just going into these caves over and over and over and over again, because Again, you don't need that base building mechanic in order to finish throughout the main lore and the main story of escaping the island. You can just put a tent down, sleep when you need to sleep, and keep going. It really allows you to fly through the game, and you're just constantly barreling through caves. So I think some sort of mechanic where it ties you to your base, whether that's a more difficult night system or not being able to skip through night, or something that would physically tie you to your base, some sort of smithy or forge, higher crafting system like the 3D printer, for example, that they use within the game. Tie that to your base so that the player can't just speed barrel through the entire game and has to be returning to their base to craft better stuff. I just think some sort of mechanic like that would really up the scale for this game. And it really doesn't even have to be that complicated. You could just make a resource that you need to make something only be available at night, something as simple as that, and that would solve the problem. Have the player not skip night, make night more difficult, make it so you have to defend at night, and then you have to build a base. I mean, literally just copy Minecraft. That is something that I feel like this game could have improved upon, is tying the base building system into the progression of the story. So at launch, I would give the Sons of the Forest a 7 out of 10. Again, it's in early access, but it does exactly what it needs to do with a short playtime, a little bit of repetitiveness, and just a few missing accessibility options and gameplay mechanics that would have expanded and made it a lot more fun, pushing it into that 8 to 9 range. But there's nothing wrong with the game as it is. It's exactly what I expected to pay for. I have no problem with the state that it's in. It sounds like a 7 is low, but with what I paid for the game and what I expected out of the game, this is exactly what I thought it would be. So I'm happy with it. It was a fun time. If you're looking for something to play between games, this is something that you might enjoy. Let me know what you guys think of the game down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys on the next one.